ensure active alignment and participation by key stakeholders, encourage entrepreneurship and support development of micro, small, and medium enterprises in the state, identify and build upon industries with comparative advantage with particular attention on the value chain. During the second plenary session, which was led by Engineer Suleiman Admanu, Honorable Minister for Water Resources, Mrs. Runke Shekwefun, the Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, presented the investment opportunities available in the agricultural sector of the state, some of which include cocoa, oil palm, rubber, maize, cassava, rice production, which needs to be tapped into. It was proposed and agreed by all that states should focus on agricultural value chain, private-public partnership, and large-scale farming. The keynote address was delivered by His Excellency Cesar Gaviria Trujillo, former President of Colombia, Secretary General, Organization of American States, between 1994 and 2004. He shared his perspective on some of the problems confronting Africa and advised Nigeria to learn from the experience and mistakes made by Latin America, especially in Colombia. He emphasized the need for Nigeria to invest significantly in security and the judiciary system. He mentioned, amongst other things, the need for Nigeria to tap into abundant supply of natural gas. He also recommended that Nigeria should focus on infrastructural development to partner with the private sector. He also recommended the abolition of fuel subsidy, improvement of banking system, development of best agricultural practice, just like Brazil. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, in his remarks, commended the governor for the infrastructural development in the state, as well as creating a liberal environment for business to thrive. He acknowledged the appreciable growth of the state's IGR and called on the state to be a pioneer for the using of concrete to build roads, as the state is now the largest producer of cement in the country. He called for leverage between the state and federal government in the area of agriculture. He concluded by calling for more accountability amongst public officers. The third plenary session on environment sustainable development, a luxury or an imperative of emerging economies, was led by Ms. Amina Mohammed, the Honorable Minister of Environment. She stated the need to work on climate change, especially as it affects the rising sea level desertification. She called for the private sector to examine its relationship with the people and how it affects environment. Concurring, the other members of the panel added that there is need to balance economic gains against environmental price, optimizing the reserve for the future and pursue the waste to energy plan. The first section and the last for yesterday, transportation, strategic infrastructure as a catalyst for social economic development, was led by His Excellency Babatunde Raji Fashola, the Honorable Minister of Works, Power and Housing. In his presentation, he stated that infrastructural development serves as a catalyst for industrial development. It leads to capital appreciation of properties and creates recurrent income earning. He advised that state governments' borrowing should be properly channeled into infrastructural development. Members of the panel recommended that building roads or transportation infrastructure should be an indiscriminate approach to ensure that the state meets the social needs of the people and ultimately deliver on what it's designed to do. They also stated that there is need to incorporate air transport in the state infrastructural terrain. Ogun State does not need to depend on neighboring states for facilities it can develop. This sets the tone for today's deliberation. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Commissioner for Commerce and Industry. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go into the first session for today, which is the Ogun State Investors Feedback, Now and the Future. Anchoring the session is Mr. Felusha Phillips. Mr. Felusha Phillips is the Chairman, Chief Executive Officer of Phillips Consulting Limited. Mr. Phillips is also a board member and the immediate past chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, and is the chairman of the Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join me in welcoming Chief Felusha Phillips?
For the investors that have established their industries in Ogun State and that will be taking part in this first session, I'd like to bring to take the seat the Managing Director of Unilever Nigeria Limited, and there is no doubt any household in Nigeria where their household products will not be found. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite to take a seat this morning Mr. Yo Nassau. Can we put our hands together for him? Equally, when it comes to dependability in the cement industry, they are a force to be reckoned with. We're happy to have here this morning the Managing Director of Lafarge Nigeria PLC, makers of that household cement in Nigeria, Miss Adepeju Adebaju. Also, instead of going abroad, bringing wires and importing them into the country, we can boast that we have our own Nigerian products called Nigerian wire and cables. And joining us this morning to also share his experience is the Managing Director of Coleman Technical Industries Limited, Mr. George Onofowoko.
They have become one of the leaders in the snack and confectionery business. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, can you please join me in welcoming Mr. Salim Adegunwa, the MD of Right Foods Limited. There is no household without a product of this company. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. John Komantaros, the Chairman of Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC. And our last investor, definitely not the least, this morning is Mr. Segun Dada, is the Chairman, National Association of Small Scale Industries. Mr. Segun Dada, please. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir, Chief Phillips.
Can you all hear me? Is this on? Once again, let me welcome you all to this session and to recognize and thank the Governor of Ogun State for putting together what I regard as an extremely successful investment forum. I was here yesterday, obviously, and I must tell you that I went back to my hotel room yesterday extremely excited about what I heard and proud of being an Ogun State indigene. And he has confirmed to me, yes, very much so. And I think yesterday's session confirmed to me this concept I have about the fact that the cup is half full in Nigeria. And a lot of us spend our time looking at the empty part, and we don't tend to look and appreciate the part that is full. Nigeria is a composite of 36 states. And each time we talk about the country, we fail to dissect it a bit more and look at the various regions, the different states that are doing things and are trying to make things move. When we look at our total GDP and growth rates and so on, we tend to generalize for the whole country and fail to, again, analyze and appreciate the fact that there are some states, there are some regions that are doing a lot more than others. and one needs to recognize these and therefore appreciate the fact that the cup is really half full. Now, Ogun State is doing a lot. We heard from the statistician general of the Federation that Ogun State is the fastest growing state in the country today. It has the highest level of investments. It's outperforming every other state in consumption, in output, and in the attraction of investments. And even though he mentioned that inflation in the state is slightly above the norm, that again was accounted for by the fact that Ogun State is so active that in the process is attracting a higher level of cost because of the amount of investment that is being made, and therefore it will carry that cost of additional investment. So clearly, Ogun State to me today has come up with a clear value proposition. I have this theory that like any organization, any state, and even any country, you must have a clear value proposition. You must be very clear as to what it is you bring to the table. And until you identify that, you don't know what it is you all have to focus on. So for us, in Ogun State, it is clear that its value proposition, from my perception, is revolving around two major areas. The first is agriculture. The second is transforming the outcome of agriculture into something that can be sold to the ultimate customer. So you have somebody that is transforming that which we pull from the ground into something that we can literally put on the table. And that really is Ogun State's value proposition of being an industrial state, of being a manufacturing state, a state that is focused on adding value, looking at issues about value propositions and things of that nature. So it is so clear that the private sector has become the name of the game as far as Ogun State is concerned. Ogun State has embraced the concept of working with the private sector because clearly a country, a region that does not look after the private sector can never succeed. And that is really part of what we're all suffering from. The country has depended so much on oil revenues that we fail to look at the private sector, we fail to nurture the private sector. That should really be the funding part of government. But because oil has gone, we turn around, there is no private sector, everybody seems to be struggling. But Ogun State, thankfully, like some other regions in the country, has been slightly ahead of the game. I was talking to the governor yesterday and he confirmed to me that at least we've got about 96 new investments that have come into the region over the period. And also, he certainly targeted that he'll be hitting 100 and well above that. And what that means is that, like I said, Ogun State is really pulling ahead of everybody else. Now, what you find as a result of that is that investors seek to find an investor-friendly destination. And today, one of the things that I hope we will discuss this morning is what do we mean by a place being investor-friendly? What do we mean by saying a place or region or state is attractive? What do we mean by saying that a state is competitive? These are some of the things that will come out of our conversations this morning to show the things that one must continue to do in order to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. But all this has implications. And it has implications with respect to the civil service structure, the civil service functioning in the state. Because you see, if you don't have a civil service that represents the government and the governance of the state, working hand in hand with the private sector and making life easy for the private sector to thrive, then it will be failing. It is the civil service structure, it is the civil service system, it is the positive bureaucracy that we must face that's going to help us to engage with the private sector, encourage the private sector, give them the comfort that coming to this state is something that is going to be beneficial to them and give a good return on their investment. So on the other side of the coin, we are saying we want to invite investors, but we must behave in a way that accommodates them. That leads me to the fact that Ogun State miraculously, and I use the word miraculously, moved from a position of 36 in the Doing Business Index to 5. And that is a huge leap. And it's showing that, yes, it has become aware and is sensitive to those things that are essential for any investor coming into the state in meeting all their needs and making life a lot easier for them. And there's so many factors that you can look at that they've done very, very well in. and one really must congratulate them. In the midst of all this, we're saying, do we have the right ecosystem to support the state, to support investment? The World Economic Forum had said earlier on, when they do their global competitiveness ratings, which again is really relevant to us here in Nigeria. Don't forget that any point in time, Ogun State is competing with about 36 other states if we include the Federal Capital Territory. So there's an internal competition that is going on, and it is the ability to make yourself the most attractive state in the country that helps us to become the most or more attractive country in the global arena. So when you look at the ratings and the issues and the factors that the World Economic Forum looks at in order to assess whether a state or a country is attractive, we also have to continue to look at those things. And it has to do with the institutions in the state, the legal and judicial system, the law enforcement ability, the protection of investments by the law, having standards, level of compliance, property rights, and things of that nature. From an institutional point of view, we must have in place. The second thing is infrastructure, which we all talk about all the time. We say that we must have a drainage system, roads. We know there's a huge, ambitious plan to build a railway system from the state to attract and make transportation a lot easier. We have issues on power, telecoms, and what does the state do for you? And what, proudly, you can say, are you doing for the state? So let's start off with you, and then we'll hope we can have a conversation about this afterwards.
State, that has to be the main attraction point, because you are participating in building an ecosystem that will endure. And in the end, all businesses...
I wondered who was the host, because indeed Lafarge in the form of WAPCO has been in the state for 59 years. It was established in 1959. And so I think we actually predated Ogun State, having been part of the Western region. And as my colleague from Unilever said, over the years, through civil administration, through military regimes, through successive changes of ownership of the then WAPCO, which is now Lafarge Africa PLC, we have continued to invest in Ogun State. We've invested in so many areas. From the obvious areas, we have 5 cement plants, we have 7 ready-mix plants, we have 1 aggregates quarry. On top of that, we're invested in power. We have 90 megawatts currently in Ewekoro. We're moving that to 310 megawatts by 2017. We have huge social investments. We estimate our social impact is in the region of 24 billion naira per annum. We have huge environmental investments, which is very much in line with the theme of this conference. We have huge investments in the community. And the question is, why do we continue to invest in Ogun State? As my colleague has said, I must say that I may be slightly biased because I'm a proud daughter of Ogun State, so I will try to remove that bias from this conversation. But I do believe that here we have one of the most investor-friendly and accessible governments in the country. I remember once I brought one of my CEOs to visit the governor, and he took us on a personally driven tour of Ogun State around all the sites, and we spent about an hour at an industrial waste site, standing right there in the landfill. And so I think the investor-friendly nature of the state draws very much from the leadership of the personal leadership of the governor. Of course, you can't invest in any state if there's no peace and security. By nature, cement companies are there for a long time. We tend to invest for 50 years, 100 years, and we have one of the most peaceful relationships in terms of community relationships in this state. And that gives us the confidence to keep on investing. There's very good security in the state. It's clear that we have very good transportation links. It's not for no reason that this state is called the gateway.
Additional infrastructure, additional expansion into smelting our copper here locally, smelting our aluminum here. Now, you've given every 5 kilometers access to someone on the road, but now it's